Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Deconversion Stories. And today, this fine gentleman, Damien, here, has bailed me out because I didn't have anyone scheduled for today because I've been pretty busy, and so has Mikey. So neither one of us were able to land someone for today. Actually, as a matter of fact, either last Thursday or Tuesday, which ended up taking off because of how busy I was. So we're back, though, and Damien here, also known as the tall, friendly atheist dad who has a podcast as well, he has decided to buck up and join, or buck up. He didn't really pay anything, but he has decided to join me for this episode today, and I very much appreciate that, Damien.
Neil, good morning. Thank you for having me on. I saw your cries for help, and I thought I'll. Yes. Yeah. I was divinely provided by the Lord, just in your time of need.
I'm sure that's what happened.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a miracle.
The flying spaghetti monster works in mysterious ways.
Indeed, he does. And I see you've been touched by his noodly appendage as well.
Yes.
I'm not sure where we're going with that, but anyways, guys, you know what I do here on the show. I chat with people about their journeys away from whatever belief systems they were once a part of, everything from religion to even pseudoscientific woo-woo. Like I had an ex-guru on here one time who was into crystal healing and stuff, so which is pretty, and she lives in my neck of the woods too, which is pretty interesting. But Damien, what I want to know is kind of like take us back to the days of being an indoctrinated person and how you finally found your way out of that belief system, and what was the fallout from that?
Okay, I suppose it depends on how far back you want to get in. I wasn't raised a Christian. I was raised in a nominal or a agnostic family. They weren't antagonistic to religion, but they weren't church attendees either. That kind of stuff. I was a teenage convert, so my conversion story is that what happened? The Gideon Society of all people, they came to my school, and they
the hotel Bible guys, right?
Correct, yes, and they're also the high school Bible guys.
Yeah, okay.
So they came to my high school, and this was back in the days in the mid-90s when having religious people at school grounds was still an accepted thing.
Right.
So they gave out like these little pocket New Testament and Psalms, and so I had that, and for me that kind of kick-started the God question, and so over the weeks and months, I considered it, all that kind of stuff. But at that time, unfortunately, both my parents grew up in abusive environments. And so what then happened was they took that bad childhood experience out on each other. So what would usually happen were lots of screaming fights, things being thrown around, all that kind of stuff. Definitely wasn't pleasant.
Yeah, for
sure. For a person like me who has their own abuse story, mix it all together, and it doesn't work out very well. The way I got converted was that one night, one particular fight got really, really bad. So what I noticed in the back of this Psalms and New Testament was literally like a little paragraph where, like, if you sign your name, I, the undersigned, accept Jesus as my Lord and Savior, and will serve him from there on in, like something like that. And I think for probably a week or so up to this particular day, things had been weighing and all that kind of stuff. So this one particular night, instead of the fighting usually stopping at 10 or 11, the fighting kept on going to 12, kept on going to 1, kept on going to 2, and all this while, just got progressively worse and worse.
Oh man!
So what happened was I said, God, if you're there, if you can hear me, if you can help, if you make the fighting stop, I will sign my name in the back of this book.
Uh-oh.
Do you want to know what happened?
The fighting stopped.
Correct. The fighting stopped.
Oh boy.
Yep. And to me, that was the answer to prayer. That was enough to convince me that yes, there is a God. Yes, this God exists. all this kind of stuff. So pen and paper, wrote it out. I'm now a Christian. I better start acting like one.
Right. Careful you don't get arrested.
That's dangerous. I really should have rescinded my signature 2 minutes later when the fighting restarted.
Oh.
But a deal is a deal.
Yeah.
So that was so from there on in. So at about I think I was about 15, 16 at this time. I think I was in year 10 of high school or something like that. So yeah, in senior high school, and yeah, so I went through the next few years pretending. I suppose like I was pretending because at around this time the Catholic Church sex scandal abuse scandal started to break out. You know, where they found like one diocese, like one church had been covering it up, one diocese had been covering it up, all this other stuff. Mm-hmm. So I became like a self-styled Christian. I had some really, really wacky beliefs because previous to that, one of my aunties was a New Age spiritualist.
Okay.
And I had bought into that a little bit as well. And I
found did
some,
too back in the day.
Okay, there you go. It's so yeah, I maybe had some. I maybe had some hang-ups from there. So like she was into like astral travel and messages from the dead, and yeah. And there was one particular time where she gave me a message from my dead father. I was raised by my stepdad.
Okay.
And unfortunately my real father had died when I was very young, and I never really knew him. But yeah, one time my auntie took me aside and said, "Damien, I've got a message for you from your dad." And I could feel like the raw emotion come over me, and I was sitting next to my auntie and I was crying my eyes out. And it's like, well, you know, there must be something to this. And yeah, so but then from there, so one of the reasons I dropped New Age spirituality after I became a Christian was there were verses in the Bible that said that, you know, anyone who practices witchcraft or sorcery is an idolater and is an enemy of God. So I figured I better drop this. I better drop that shit right now. You know, if I'm going to be a good...
Hold it.
Yes.
Doesn't God practice sorcery? I mean, he does incantations. He spoke everything into being.
I
right?
know.
Is that it's sorcery.
Good for thee, but not for me.
He's the only one. Yeah. What's good for the goose isn't good for the gander, right?
Exactly. But when you're a self-styled teenage convert who is going through a lot of troubles in life, who has had a horrible background, all that kind of stuff, you know, logic and questioning authority weren't really my strong suits at the time.
Yeah, right.
So for the next few years, I said I was a self-styled Christian. I eventually started going out with a girl who went to a Lutheran church.
Okay.
So for about a year, I started attending a Lutheran church, and you know, it's basically old fuddy-duddies. You know, there's like I think the band.
There's a term I haven't heard in a while.
Oh, there you go. The band consisted of like one person on a pipe organ or something, you know, and you had like the hymn books, and you had those like big number boards that had like 5 sets of numbers, and those numbers were the hymns you're going to sing that week. You know, so that's kind of how old timey it was, but you know, it was
yeah.
From
pipe
there,
organs sound kind of cool though.
They do. I like them. But like you can tell you're in like an old timey church when there are no drums.
Right.
Like it's like drums seem to scare, you know, fundamentalist old people away. It's really weird. So anyway, from there, I was still I suppose a nominal Christian. I wasn't really, you know, and like you can guess what sort of secret things I was doing away from Sunday, you know, as a teenage lad. But then my descent into fundamentalism took off in uni. So in uni, I was in one of the cafeteria, in one of the refectories, studying away, and this guy who looks a bit like Joel Osteen came up to me and we started chatting.
Good Lord. He was teeth. Is that what you're saying?
he was really thin, really pencil neck. He had that really wavy hair.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, he was very, very like, how can I say? Yeah, very, very. I'm trying to think of the right word. I can't think of it, but anyway, he was very much Joel Osteen, like a very Australian Joel Osteen. So he came down and sat next to me. We started talking about religion, and he invited me to his university campus weekly Bible study session.
Oh, okay.
And so I thought, if I'm going to be a proper decent Christian, you know, I've got this opportunity to prove my bona fides. So yeah, so I went along to this gentleman's Bible study that he ran with. Sometimes his wife came along as well. So they were both full-time working professionals, but they took time out from their jobs to have like weekly Bible studies and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And so eventually from there, they invited me and my girlfriend to go to their church services they were having at their house. So our Sunday mornings would be, I think it was like 9 o'clock till 10 o'clock or something at my girlfriend's Lutheran church, and then like 10:30 to 12 at this like, literally church in a lounge room. There were like maybe 10 people there. Yeah, and then like you had lunch there afterwards and fellowship and all this kind of stuff.
10 people in Judaism. 10 people is all you need to have a service.
Okay, well there you go. So these guys had that. Yeah. So it was a very tight knit group, very racially diverse as well, and that was something that I didn't experience at this old timey Lutheran church as well. So that kind of there was like Asians, there were Africans, there were
Nice.
Eventually, then me and my girlfriend split up. And so I had to choose churches, and I didn't choose a Lutheran church. And so then I then dedicated myself to this to this church group. Now I would call them.
Did you?
Sorry, yeah.
Did you do that because you liked the way they were diverse like that?
A little
like
bit, yes.
Inclusive, I guess, would be the
Indeed,
word.
yeah. I thought they were very welcoming, very warm, very very friendly, very down to earth. I felt like I fit in, fairly well. Like, so I basically joined this group because one, I didn't want to see my ex-girlfriend anymore, and two, they'll to continue my my Christian walk. I joined this church to prove my bona fides, act like a decent Christian, be good, God's good little boy, kind of thing. So this church group, I would say they were fundamentalists. I didn't really know that at the time, but the reason I say they were fundamentalists is that like eventually they started to exert, how can I say, like the pastor himself was okay, but it was really his wife who was the senior travel agent for guilt trips.
Okay.
And this is one thing I've noticed in churches where the husband and wife are the leadership, is that it's mostly the wife who exerts control, and like the pastor's wife is untouchable. Like the pastor's wife could cut the head off a puppy in the middle of the church service, and there's no way you could reprove her, because she stands behind her husband to deflect criticism.
Oh boy!
But there were times where a lot of the control they had were like, one of the things they did was they got me to get rid of my worldly music collection, because that's not music from the Lord. So so I had to and so they wanted me to get rid of that, and they gave me like Keith Green as an alternative. If you're not familiar with Keith Green, but so they try to give me like Christian alternatives to the stuff that I grew up with, kind of stuff. It then started to get like, the control really started to get a bit much when, I'm just trying to think, when was it? When I found a girl that I liked. One of the things about this particular church was that relationships between members had to be run past the leadership. and I didn't agree to that.
Right.
Yeah, it was like, it's, if I'm going to wear the blame, well, I can say, like, I'm the one who's going to be in the relationship, guys, not you. You guys stay out. You guys stay out of that business, and that kind of stuff. And so, like, we went ahead anyway. That kind of stuff. This sort of thing. But yeah, so it's just things like that were like, they had policies about, like what times like boys and girls could stay out together till, like a boy and a girl shouldn't be seen out in public together without a chaperone or something, like all this stuff to like prevent the wrong appearance from being given, which I think on the face of it is a good idea, but there's a time where it goes from being good advice to thought control.
Yep.
And what I noticed was that infractions by the membership, they came down on infractions by the membership, but infractions by the leadership were like swept under the rug.
Of course they are.
So yeah, that was
Just look at the Catholic Church. Look what they do.
Yes.
With all those horrific shit that goes on with their fucking whatever, their priests and stuff that are molesting children, and then they sweep them under the rug and relocate them somewhere else.
Exactly. This is like brutal. Thankfully, this church weren't like doing well. I haven't heard any stories of that, but
that's good.
What I did hear was that the leadership. So if you want to know who they are, I think their website is byhim.org. So they go by the name of like Hope International Movement, and so the movement was started in Thailand by a guy who came to Melbourne, Australia, which is where I live now. So he came to Melbourne, Australia, and while he was studying for a PhD, he accepted Christ, and then he went back to Thailand to start his own church movement. So if you Google search Hope of God Bangkok, you will come across a lot of horror stories about how people were pressured to perform, how the finances were held like very secretly, all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
So sort of like a soft fundamentalism.
Right.
Like that they weren't like KJV only, or they weren't living on their own compound, but they.
So they were like a full-on cult, is what you're saying.
Sorry, say that again.
So they weren't like a full-on cult.
No. But having said that, my parents did raise some issues when I started attending these guys' church full time. It's like, well, Damien, they meet at home. Don't you think they're a cult? And I said to them, well, they're just a small group of religious people who are very enthusiastic about their religious ideas. Mm-hmm. Which...
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. A rose by any other name is just as sweet.
Yeah.
So, in short, from there...
You got to remember, does it fall under the bite model?
Well, this is the thing. I've looked up the Steve. You mean the Stephen Hassan bite model?
Yeah, the behavioral control.
Yes. Yep. Yeah. And I've run my church past this, and there are like probably at least half of the categorizations they match.
There you go.
Yeah. So, and that's why I say, like, when I say they're a cult, I don't mean that in a pejorative way, so like the David Koresh kind of thing. I just mean that they exert a lot of behavior, a lot of control, in that, especially with relationships, but also like the expectations to perform. If you weren't in the door, 10 minutes before service started, you may as well have come half an hour late, kind of thing. You were expected at, midweek Bible study. You were expected at like any prayer rallies they had, like any all-night prayer meetings, any like on campus activities. You're expected there, all this kind of thing. And one of the reasons for that is because this church had a very strong Asian influence. I don't know how familiar you are with Asian culture, but the idea of face, the idea of like not embarrassing someone inadvertently through your silly actions.
Right.
So basically, the way this church ran was, are you familiar with the shepherding model?
Yes.
Yes. Yeah. And so this church practiced that. And so basically what it would be was that, like, if you didn't turn up to a particular event, it would look bad on the person who was shepherding you.
Right.
And so they would then be asked questions. Well, hold on, why didn't Damien appear at this thing? And it'd be like, well, I don't know. Yeah, and then when the next time you show up to church, it'd be like, oh, why didn't you turn up at this? Why weren't you at this particular event? Well, I've got my own fucking life, But yeah, that's and that's the thing. Like, you were expected to be at, you were expected to support the family, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But yeah, eventually, my wife and I married, and again, not necessarily with their blessing. Like, it definitely wasn't a shotgun wedding. It was just, we decided that, we had found, we were happy with each other. We needed to move in because, like, we were looking for a house. All this kind of stuff. We were like renting. Why pay 2 lots of rent when you can have only one? Plus, my sister-in-law was needed a place to stay because she was studying in our town as well. All that kind of stuff. So yeah, like, we got married for convenience, but we're still together 18 years later. 18 years and 2 kids.
That's good.
Later.
That's
good.
Yeah,
that's a.
You know what? You hear so many people that end up getting married and only to be divorced within a few years, and
unfortunately,
I'm one of them. So.
Oh, okay.
But I mean, after 3 months of marriage, I found out she was doing cocaine and other dudes. So I was like, yeah, no, I'm done. So
I don't know what's worse.
Yeah, well, yeah.
Sorry about that. But yeah, no, but because my wife came from a Methodist family, I think she, there's that cultural. So she was, so she's Chinese, she's Christian, and she's Methodist. So she's like really, just really conservative. It's like, well, okay, if she started doing cocaine and other guys, I'd be like, oh my god, you did cocaine? Whoa. Yeah, but yeah, so 18 years and 2 kids later, we're happily married. So anyway, from there, I just got the impression that these guys were way too controlling. So I left that church. I then went to a Church of Christ. Went to them for a couple of years. Then from there, I went to a Baptist church. And now the thing is, like, when Americans say Baptist, the very first thing they think of is the SBC. In Australia, the Baptist Church of Australia are like the complete opposite of the SBC. They're very, I think probably just trying to think. Someone told me, like, who they actually kind of really like. They're sort of like Adventists. They're all, like, they're very soft. They're very non-judgmental. It was like really, really weird. And one of the stories I tell is that in this Baptist church, in the children's ministry, so they had like a children's, like, like after the greetings introduction, like all the children would go off to like the separate building where they had the children's services. In the children's music team, there was a guy who was a lead guitarist in an 80s hair metal band. And
I remember those days.
And he would turn up, like he almost looked like he turned up from a gig. He had like the long hair, a bit like yourself. He had like the tattered jeans. He had like the short t-shirts up to here. And yeah, everything he played was like the distortion was on 11, but the kids loved him. And so, yeah, like, but things like in my previous fundamental church, that wouldn't fly. You will be told that, you're setting a bad example, you're causing the other people to stumble, are you walking with the Lord, all that kind of stuff. And that was probably the big question, are you walking with the Lord? And like every
how do you know?
Like,
can't fucking see him, so how do you know if he's walking with you?
Well, because it's a feeling in your heart, you see.
That could be anything.
And,
as a matter of fact, they have
yes.
laboratory results studies now that show how religious experiences happen. They know the parts of the brain that lights up, and they've been able to map the whole thing out. They can actually cause people to have religious experiences, which I find fascinating.
That is. But are you referring to the God helmet by any chance?
Yeah, I think there was a series of tests that were done with something called the God helmet, but there's other ones as well.
Oh, yeah, right? Yeah. No, I have heard of things where, like when they do like an MRI mapping of the brain, like when they ask you like who God hates and then who you hate, the areas of the brain that light up are like very similar. And it's like, that's very interesting. So anyway, I'll get to my deconversion.
Sure.
In short, I didn't know it at the time, but I had a generalized anxiety disorder for years and years. And the thing is, like when you spiritualize those experiences, like prayer will temporarily work. Like when you get like a panic attack, or when you have all these thoughts floating around your head that you can't shake, and when you have all these like horrible feelings, you said when you're a charismatic fundamentalist, or like what I was, you spiritualize these things, and then you rely on the fact that when someone prays for you and you feel better, well, okay, the prayer must have worked because there's something behind the prayer to make it work. And it couldn't just be yourself, because if it was yourself, then why couldn't you shake the demons that are causing your mental health issues, kind of thing.
Right.
And so eventually, I got stuck into this cycle where I'd have a panic attack, I'd pray, an hour later have another panic attack, pray, and like it get deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper, up until I almost hospitalized myself. That was kind of I don't want to get into that kind of aspect, but it got serious. Sure. It got to the point where like one day I turned up to the office to work, and like I'd barely slept, I'd barely eaten, I didn't know what was going on, and like I came to work like white as a ghost. Like if you think I'm white now, I turned up even whiter, and the HR lady literally looked at me and said, "Damien, what are you doing here?" Like she could see that something was wrong. So what then happened was that the company paid. So my employer had actually paid for 4 sessions with a psychologist, and so I sat. So I and up to this stage, the idea of a child of God going to see a psychologist was anathema. It was like, if you like, because I was, especially in my charismatic fundamentalist church, if you relied on psychologists and psychiatrists, you weren't walking in faith. You were taking the advice of ungodly people. Why would you take the advice of ungodly people to help you get better, kind of thing? Or like, especially when. Like, and they would point to verses like where Jesus encounters the demoniacs, the Gerasene demoniacs, and where he says a word and the demons go into the pigs. That was given as a classic example of mental health issues being caused by demons, and also like the episode
epilepsy.
Correct. I was going to get to epilepsy, but also like in 1 Samuel, where God sends a spirit to torment Saul. That was so those three biblical episodes were like tied, and also where God causes Nebuchadnezzar to act like an animal because he didn't glorify God. So in charismatic fundamentalism, if you had a mental health issue, it was because there was a secret sin in your life, or because God was punishing one of your ancestors down to the 3rd and 4th generation. It was, so as I said, it was spiritualized, and because it was spiritualized, you never got to the root cause of what those issues were.
Right.
So, and so eventually, so this atheist HR manager paid for 4 sessions with a psychologist, and I can remember, it's still clear as day in my mind now. I sat down with this psychologist. We sat for about an hour and a bit, and I just went through all these symptoms I was having. This one, this, and she was asking some questions just to get more out of me. And
sure, yeah.
Do you know that feeling you get when you're told like a life-changing piece of information and you don't know how to process it?
You mean like a an epiphany of some kind.
Something like, yeah, it's like when you get smacked over the head with a truth bomb, and you don't know the process it. And that was literally me standing outside the psychologist's office wondering what had just happened. And then it was just like the fact that someone was able to put a name and a diagnosis to something I was feeling, that was gold. That was like. So anyway, I kept on seeing the psychologist, and we got to some of the root causes of why I was going through what I was going through, that kind of stuff. However, at the time, I didn't blame my faith for anything. I thought, God still exists. Jesus is still good. Jesus still loves me. I'm still walking with the Spirit. All this kind of stuff. Sure. But then I questioned, has my faith been causing me these issues?
Interesting way of looking at it.
Well, yeah. And so I looked at like some of the thought patterns I was having, what I'd been taught by my charismatic fundamentalist church, all this kind of stuff, and I kind of then reasoned out that how can I say? I kind of reasoned out that God is real, but it was the way my faith, I've been practicing my faith, that had fed into my anxiety issues.
Okay.
So, at that stage, went... Sorry. Yep.
Do you think that kind of stemmed from maybe you weren't a good enough believer kind of thing? Or you didn't believe enough, maybe?
It's hard to say, because I thought, like, I was giving Christianity the best go I could. Sure. I was dedicated. I was, I had a... Well, I suppose if you look in terms of dedication, I was part of the church music team. I was writing a Christian blog. I might jump on online chat rooms or Twitter or forums or whatever, to preach the word. Or if there was an opportunity to have a spiritual conversation, you'd use that. You think, oh, God has given me the perfect opportunity to tell them about Jesus. Yeah, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
I definitely wasn't, like rebuking demons and all this kind of stuff. But sure. In terms of when compared to the Baptist people around me, I was definitely dedicated, and I definitely believed. So when Christians come to me and say, "Well, Damien, you never really believed," I say, get stuffed. One, get stuffed, because you don't know what's going on in my head, and two, probably the number one response I have to you're never really Christian was that, well, technically your pastor may not be a Christian as well, and like doesn't that scare you that your pastor could be a wolf in sheep's clothing who's pretending to lead you to God, kind of thing.
Sure. Yeah.
So anyway, so from there I decided that I had been living someone else's faith. And that was and I think if I say the words pastor in training, that was kind of the mentality that I had, because back in my charismatic church, I had all these people pray for me and like prophesy over me that, Damien, you're going to be like a great leader of God. God is going to use you to, do this.
So how do they know that though?
Because God told them. And it was interesting. It was interesting that you may not be familiar with the name, but John Jacks, who is apparently the most foremost prophet in Australia, he came to my church, and they had like a prophesying session one night, and yeah, it was okay. The usual guff that God's going to put you in a suit, and He's going to raise you up as long as you can control the forces in your life, like stuff, general platitudes like that. Mm-hmm. Like nothing specific that you're going to go through a period of atheism, nothing that the abuse from your childhood is going to cause you to want to hurt yourself, things like that. No, it's always just very general, like colourful platitudes or analogies. Or it's like, you're a bulldog of God. You're encouraged to, charge forth like a soldier. And just general stuff like that.
Yeah.
So anyway, what was I going to say? So I had always felt like I was a pastor in training, and that was because of the controlling mentality that my charismatic fundamentalist church had put into me. And I realized that trying to live up to that exceedingly high standard was causing me issues. So I then realized that if I'm going to be a Christian, I have to believe because I know it's the truth.
Right.
And yeah, and so from there, and then I realized that if there is a God, and this God gave us rational faculties in order to process data, and to be able
And he screwed up.
Well, yeah.
Because science came along and we eventually realized, oh wow, this is just horseshit.
Well, we still have the rational faculties that these have to be filtered through a methodology, but yeah. So, what was I say? So if God gave us rational faculties, and if God values honest intellectual inquiry, God will let me discover for myself. And if God really exists, then I will follow God. I will be a Christian, but it will be my faith. It will be me as Damien who is worshipping God. Not Damien the pretend pastor, not Damien the pretend Christian, but Damien who has honestly and agnostically researched the evidence at hand and has come to that decision. And so I agnostically and dispassionately looked at both sides of the argument. And I kind of realized within a week that it's quite possible I've been duped.
just a tad.
Just a tad, yes. And so I wouldn't say I was an atheist at that point, but then when I realized that the atheist side of the equation, probably the one thing I realized was that the atheist side of the equation is a lot more honest than the Christian side. And like, for example, the atheist experience. I devoured seasons of the atheist experience.
Yeah.
And like Matt Dillahunty, got into a lot of his arguments, and I think he presents some very good arguments. Arguments.
Yeah.
I listened to a lot of debates as well. The hitch, the hitch is always good for a laugh.
The hitch slaps.
the hitch slaps. Yep. Sam Harris, was good value as well.
Yeah, he's kind of gone off the deep end though these days.
Well, this is if I can make it a little bit of an aside. There's no official position of horseman of atheism. That was always a title that
people bestowed upon them.
Correct.
Because they all got together to make that video and talk about it.
Exactly. But regardless of their opinions on other things, to me, what matters is their arguments for or against God.
Sure.
I am kind of against hero worship. Like, just in case, the whole thing should be about their arguments that they made. And the Hitch, Dawkins, Dennett, and Harris, they make killer arguments. Like, I don't, even if I did consider them role models of atheism, that's like saying Hitler was a role model for Catholicism. It's like, it's like I don't quite agree with that, but so when you say Sam, I still think Sam Harris has really good arguments. I don't agree with this stuff about Islam or some other stuff, but or Dawkins's view on transgenderism, stuff, or the sort of people who are transgender. But that's by the by. All I care about is his arguments, for and against the God hypothesis.
Yeah, sure.
So anyway, so Sam Harris provided some good arguments, and what I noticed in debates was that atheists tended to answer the questions just more honestly, more straightforward. They didn't rely on like fallacies or stuff like that.
Or faith.
Faith, yes. So what I eventually concluded was that to prove that God exists, you have to first believe that God exists. I could not find an independent argument that sustains the argument for the existence of God. Like, you kind of have to.
Because there really isn't one.
Well, that's something I've discovered in the years down the track. But like when you say God did this, you kind of have to, like, how can I say, like when I ask someone to rationally prove that God did it, it's like, well, how do you know God did it? How do you know
That's right.
Satan is? How do you know Satan isn't intercepting prayers? How do you know Zeus isn't intercepting prayers? How do you
Right.
know, all these points?
Any, yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. And you're right. It's faith. It's like I have faith that God exists. I have faith that God exists. Therefore, God did this thing that I asked him to.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, I don't. And this is the thing. Like, well, okay, it's good that you say that, but how do you prove that? And just what I found was that, like, in almost every conversation
that.
I have, that it always starts with the presupposition that God exists. And it's like, well, I want you to prove that presupposition.
Mm-hmm.
And so eventually,
it's not easy to do.
well, no. And this is the thing. And like what I found was that all the arguments for God could also be used to prove Zeus, could be used to prove Marduk, to be used to prove Thor,
Vishnu, Shiva, it doesn't matter. You can name them all. Right?
Exactly. If you believe in a timeless, spaceless, immortal, anthropomorphical being, then okay. So eventually, I came to the position that I could not objectively prove that God exists, and the only place that God exists is in my head. So if God exists only in my head, he doesn't exist out of my head, and if he doesn't exist out of my head, he doesn't exist.
That's right.
That was it. That was kind of that's it. That's my deconversion story.
Well, it's true. All deities that have, and let's face it here. There have been hundreds of thousands
yes,
of deities proposed all throughout our history, from the days of being Neolithic, back in the day when we were, the first ones of us, and even some of our ancestors also had deity worship of kinds. Mm-hmm. They could tell that by some of the burial sites for Neanderthals and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So what it is a lack of understanding of how science works, and we had to make something up to fill those gaps, and it still exists today. So we came up with all these cool ideas about ghosts and deities and demons and all kinds of shit like that, because we didn't have the right answer. But once enlightenment in the scientific method became a thing, suddenly those gaps were being filled with realities.
Yes. Yep.
Right? Lightning isn't caused by Zeus or Thor. It's actually
volcanoes aren't God's getting angry. Earthquakes aren't God's getting angry. Earthquakes are tectonic movement of the ground beneath us.
We've actually got a believer in the chat with us,
and that would be
Maximo. Apparently converting to Judaism.
He is, and I have to say, Max, how are you, brother? Because I know Max in my personal life.
Oh, do you? Okay, well, that's cool.
Yes, I actually gave him the link to come in and come
check
and have a look, and it's good that.
Welcome, Maximo.
Welcome. Yes, good to.
I was raised Jewish. The funny thing is, I was born to a Christian couple. I was conceived in the backseat of a '57 Chevy Bel Air hardtop two-door, and which I like, because the weird thing is, Damien, is my father that I grew up with, my adopted father, was holding on to his '57 Chevy Bel Air two-door hardtop to give to me as his first son. Isn't that weird? It's one of those weird coincidences. But unfortunately, his mother made him sell it before they moved from Florida to Montreal. So, yeah, he had to sell it. And when he told me that, I cried for, I think, a week or something, because I would love to have a '57 Chevy Bel Air hardtop, right? The original factory colors, too.
Oh, geez.
Teal and white. So, it would have been...
Where you could have conceived your own kids.
Yeah, then I could have brought the next generation in.
No, exactly.
You guys have the same story as me.
By the way, as I saw that. So what I was going to say was that Maxie. What I was going to say was that so when it then comes down to, so I think the strongest arguments for God then came to like hallucinations and psychology and all these, how do you explain these experiences? Well, until you can explain the presence of, like, how can I say? if there are incorporeal forces that are manipulating material reality to do something,
How
whether
they
it
would
be
do that, I have yet to. I need to
well,
understand.
this is the thing. Like, like however they're doing it, we should be able to detect it.
Yes,
But the problem is that whenever we go into science labs, like if for some reason God never wants to go into a science lab. Oh, okay.
I'm a chemist.
Okay. Have you ever seen God in a science lab?
No.
Okay. And it seems no one else has either. And this is the thing. Like, you had the James Randi $1 million challenge.
Yep.
That kind of blew things out of the water.
Supernatural.
The fact that people like Dynamo and Matt Dillahunty and who else, David Copperfield, can all do these magical tricks. Like, if we took those three gentlemen and put them back in like 1000 AD, they would be burnt at the stake very quickly because they're doing
that are worshipped as a deity.
Correct. Yes. Exactly. And so it seems that, from my perspective, that the reason that we worship God is because of these gaps that we can't fill in. And it seems that, like, whenever, I think it was Sam Harris who said that, like, over time, no scientific answer has been replaced by a supernatural one.
Nope.
But every supernatural answer that we've got has been replaced.
Has been replaced by a scientific or a naturalistic one. Yes.
And so I think, in my experience now, the only argument left is the origins of life.
Funny you mentioned that.
Tell me more.
We are getting closer and closer to that answer.
Indeed, yes.
Especially here on this planet. There are many things that have come into a lot, actually. I'm not going to go into everything, but we do know how, through abiogenesis, how life can form. They have yet to actually repeat that experiment in a lab, but they've come close on multiple occasions where they've made amino acids and proteins and stuff that have come out of seemingly nothing. See, the thing is a lot of believers love that question. Well, how do you get something from nothing? Well, you don't, because nothing doesn't exist. There is no such thing as nothing. Even the Voyager 1 space probe that left our solar system and is now in interstellar space.
Yes, yep.
Notice that even in 1 cubic centimeter of space, there's always matter of some kind.
Yeah,
it doesn't matter. Everywhere you go, it doesn't matter. There's a joke. Everywhere you go, there's always something. We have looked everywhere for nothing, and it just doesn't exist. There's always something. Always something there. So how, the Big Bang, the best educated guess that they've inferred from the evidence that we do have, is we went from a non-vacuum state with matter to a vacuum state with matter. And that caused everything to rapidly expand once you go into that vacuum state. Now, is that a repeating process? Could be. There's actually evidence that points out that it could be.
Yes.
So,
but the Kalam is a valid argument, I was going to say, in its 3 syllogisms, yes, if you have those 3 syllogisms, that is like, A, B, C.
Yeah, but are the syllogisms right to begin with?
Correct. That's a good point.
Everything that exists has a beginning, or everything that begins to exist has a cause. Yes, but it doesn't need to be an agency. It doesn't need to be
or an intelligent agency. Well, the way I think about it is, the Kalam is basically the universe. Everything that exists has a cause. The universe exists. The universe has a cause. Therefore, Zeus.
Therefore, any creator god. Therefore, Mbombo from Africa, who literally threw up everything into existence. So.
Exactly. Or the universe creating pixies.
Matters. Yeah,
actually,
pixies.
And I was going to say, there's another name I noticed as well. Theoretically, I've been in a few shows with I'll say Andox as well.
Theo.
I've seen. Yeah. Yes, Theo. I've seen Theo and Ox in a few shows as well. So, g'day, guys, if you're listening.
They're fairly regular on my podcast. So
okay, and so I find that the origins of life, and I get a lot of creationists. So my shtick, I suppose, for want of a better word, is that I get annoyed to the gills with 6-day creationists.
Me too.
I used to be a 6-day creationist.
It's not possible. B, it's ridiculous to even consider it is.
Indeed. But I was a young Earth creationist until I took a university astronomy course. And then I realized that the evidence for an old universe is mind-blowing.
Overwhelming.
It's like,
Yep.
yeah, overwhelming, yes. So I then became an old Earth creationist, but I've kind of... So that, well, exactly. So I believe that the universe is billions of years old, but evolution is bullshit.
That's for you, for Mox.
And yeah, I saw that. So,
And
and everyone loves me. Hey, it's a fan club. Yay. Yeah. So so the idea that evolution is, how could all these cells come together? You can't explain how the first cell came together, and you expect us to believe that cells became monkeys, became humans. No, that's Satan lying to you. All that kind of stuff. And it's like, and then you look at,
of course it is.
So and then you look at Biologos, who led by Dr. Francis Collins, who was the head of the Human Genome Project, and it's like it's like he's looked at the evidence, guys, and So basically, I found that whatever gap we had, it eventually gets filled in by the scientific method. By scientific knowledge.
It's what the scientific method is for.
Correct. But you then get these... I think Aaron Ra put it best when he said for six-day creationism to be right, reality would have to be wrong.
That's true.
So yeah,
you're going to get solipsists going, well, how do you know anything's real? Well,
in that case, in that case, I've actually thought about that, and I realized that, like,
well, I have an answer.
And what's your answer?
We can actually confirm that reality is what it is. Whether or not it's real doesn't matter, because this is the reality that we do have. That I can go outside and say, hey, you see me, right? I see you. We're all eating the same food here at this picnic, or we're all having this good time. Well, how do I know that these minds exist outside of mine? Well, ultimately, of course, you can't. But I experience all of this stuff, and it has to mean something. So this is the reality that we do have. This is the reality that is being imposed upon us. We'll say
imposed. Yeah, that's correct.
This is the one that I have to deal with. So I'm going to deal with it the best method I know how, and that's using the scientific method that we do have.
Yep. Well, my answer to solipsism is that, like, if this reality is all in my head, then you are a figment of my imagination, and it's all moot. I don't need to argue.
That's a good one.
Figment of my imagination. It's like, well, look, if everything's my reality, then okay, that's okay, cool, nice. Let's. I'm not going to waste the limited energy that I think I have, in my brain in a jar scenario.
This requires a demonstration, right?
Oh,
Other
yes,
than that, it's just an assertion, and an assertion without evidence can be dismissed without evidence.
Well, no. Well, actually, no. It can be true that he believes. That's fine.
Oh, sure, it can be true that he believes.
Yep.
Right.
But if he said there is one creator and he created all, that would need to be substantiated by some sort of method. And this is the thing. Like, I once asked a pastor, is there any evidence for God that uniquely points to God and doesn't point to any of the other deities? And, well, I haven't got an answer back yet, but that says to me that, there's really, when you really think about it, and probably the other thing that swayed me was the moral arguments. And so things like slavery, like the Bible's clear endorsement of slavery. Like, there's no way that when you honestly read the scriptures for what they say, you can't argue that the Bible doesn't endorse slavery.
Oh, it absolutely does.
Exactly. And I found that there's no New Testament verse that condemns slavery as strongly as what any Old Testament verse condones it as well.
You're right. You're absolutely right.
What also horrified me was the depictions of genocide as well. And that's another thing that I find that Christians stumble up on, is that, well, the Amalekites were sinners, or God was punishing them for sins for 400 years, or And I think William Lane Craig has this really weird defense where he says that children who were slaughtered by the Israelite soldiers would have gotten a free pass to heaven.
Like that matters? How does that make it better?
In William Lane Craig world, that does matter. That is his so that's one thing he's famous for saying. But as well as, I think he, in one talk he said, or one blog post he wrote, was, we should feel sympathy for the Israeli soldiers who had to do the killing.
Oh, fuck off. Okay, and I lived in Israel for 2 years.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
so.
How did you find?
I find most of the people there are fairly secular, which is another reason I kind of went away from religious belief. Many of them don't believe all that shit, right? So most of my friends there were secular and didn't actually believe in a god of any kind. So
okay, I was going to ask. So you're in Canada, right?
Yes, I am. Yeah.
What is the religious experience in Canada? Like compared to like we can talk for years about what's happened in the US, but how much of that has gotten up to where you are?
There's pockets of it for sure.
Okay.
I mean, there's going to be pockets of that type of belief anywhere, really, if you ask me.
But
it's really it's not prevalent. It's not prevalent here. You've got them in the background screaming and yelling, but it's not prevalent here.
How have they taken the revelation about the children being buried under the schools?
Oh, yeah. There's many people are speaking out about that.
Yep.
We're finding that it wasn't just here; it was also in other areas too where this has happened, and that again is all the Catholic Church is doing for the most part.
Is sweeping.
Yeah. So
because
by the way. One thing really quick that I want your friend Maximo here said, and this is nothing to be proud of, by the way. I dogmatically believe it. And then closes with end of discussion, meaning he's not open to talking about why he believes what he believes.
No, I'll have a chat with him about it afterwards. But yeah, he's not usually that forthright. You know,
okay.
No,
maybe
I can trust
the folks in the chat are kind of tweaking.
No, I know, and this is what I notice about online arguments is that, you know, they do get very heated, and this is why I have the persona that I have, is that, you know, I want to go online and make friends. You know, I want to go online and, you know, and show people that, you know, yes, I'm an atheist. Yes, I do not believe what you believe. But, you know, it doesn't mean that we have to hit the block button on each other. It doesn't mean we have to hit the mute button or anything like that. You know, we can still be, you know, we can treat each other as people. You know, and this is
True.
This is the thing. You know, we are people. We are a society. We are, you know, we're the species Homo sapien on this one planet. And if we're going to divide ourselves for arbitrary reasons because the imaginary thing in your head wants you to be divisive, I think you can do better. Mm-hmm. I think humans are better when we cooperate rather than kill each other. And it's clear from church history that, you know, killing has been one of the things that they've done very well.
Oh,
and I think,
convert or die, pretty much.
Correct. And I think nowadays in this secular age where, you know, we're more aware of mental health issues, autism, epilepsy, you know, all this other stuff, you know, we now have this opportunity to like step back and do better. And so so me personally, I'm an atheist. I don't like religion, but I don't hate religious people.
No, of course not.
And a lot of my friends on Twitter, are religious people. It's like
there are some religious people that I really don't like because of what they propagate. But
correct.
For the most part, if you're just the average Joe believer and you're not pushing it on people or trying to put it into government policy, I don't have a problem with you. It's when that starts happening, then I got a problem.
Indeed. And I think one way we can change minds is by having conversations, by having friendly conversations, by, you know, like taking the temperature down, you know, just sitting back and just like walking through things, walking through points. Like, for example, I'm friends with a couple of guys in Creation Ministries International. It's like I never thought that when I'd be an atheist, I would, be, that. Just trying to think. There's a couple of. Just trying to think. Yeah, there's people who I've gotten to know, and have these productive conversations with. Well, actually, I say to my when people say that Damien, you're an anti-theist bigot who hates people and just wants the church to shut up and die, I actually tell them that after I became an atheist, I actually made more friends in my church than what I did when I was a believer.
Yeah, probably out of bewilderment. What do you mean? How can you not believe? I got to get to know you and try and convince you to come back.
Well, this is the thing. Like when I became an atheist, I became a lot more comfortable in my skin. I became a lot more comfortable about what I believe, why I believe.
Burden had been lifted off.
Correct. Yes, I am now my own. I am now my own person. My life is mine. I can't even prove the supernatural.
You do it for exists. You, and not for some imaginary beings.
Well, now I live my life for my wife and my kids. My wife and my kids are the ones who I focus my decisions for.
Sure, of course. I don't have that boat anchor myself, but as I call it, a boat anchor. But I do want to address one more real quick thing before we wrap this up and get into an after party.
Sure.
Maximo doesn't seem to know what dogma actually means, and here's the dictionary definition.
Sure.
Which says, it's the best thing we got so far. A principle or set of principles laid down by an authority as incontrovertibly true. That's what dogma means.
That's dogma.
It isn't standing by what you believe. that's just faith.
Well, you can stand by something dogmatically, but
yes, you can. Yes,
that's
absolutely you can.
So, are we going to have a party, Neil?
I think we are.
Let's have a party.
Anyone who would like to be involved, please send me a message either through Facebook or Twitter, and I'll get you a link, and you can jump in here with Damien and myself. Also, Damien, dude, you saved me today, so thank you very much for jumping in.
You're welcome, Neil. You're more than welcome. Thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me blab on for an hour.
Hey, that's what this is all about. I give people a chance to tell their stories, and hopefully that it helps somebody who may be having doubts or questions. And
no worries.
Come out on top.
Just one more thing, Neil. One more thing. I haven't noticed my subscriber count going up by millions yet.
Well, I didn't say millions.
What?
I didn't say millions.
You said.
And I think Phoebe and Ollie and all these guys want in, and they're just pinging me now, so I get to hit the coins button continually. By the way, the coins thing, if I didn't tell you, is
no. I was going to ask you, what is it? What is the coins thing?
Every time my phone goes off a lot, so we decided to turn it into. Yeah, so I get the Mario coin noise when Mario collects coins on the video game.
Yes.
So,
yep.
So we came up with the hashtag coins drinking game. So whenever the hashtag coins goes off, everyone takes a drink, right? So. Yeah. Oh yeah. Yeah. There you go. Phoebe's there. Yeah. Drink.
Cool. Let's go have a party, Neil.
Let's do that. We're going to do that, guys. So like I said, if you want to get involved, please let me know, and I can get a link to you. I already know at least a few people want to jump in already. Thanks everyone in the chat for hanging out. I appreciate you guys for being here. And Maximo, thanks for showing up, even though you're still a believer. But that's okay. Thanks for showing up, and hopefully you enjoyed or at least got a little something out of the conversation. And yeah, don't let the guys in the chat bug you, because they will.
They will. Thanks, Neil.
Yeah, no worries. Before I go, guys, just a couple of quick reminders. First of all, I want to thank my amazing patrons. You guys really are the reason I'm able to keep doing this. So you have my humble thanks, and I love you all for what you do. And a quick reminder that myself and my good friend Randolph Richardson will be starting up our own call-in show eventually. Once the studio is built, called True North Talk. If you're interested to hear more about that, head over to www.truenorthtalk.ca and check it out. And they have a link to the YouTube channel, which you can hit and go sub to, so you don't miss the day we go live. And I just did a recording of this with I'm one of the new hosts amongst many fantastic hosts that do the new nonprofit show, the revamped, relaunched one that is an ACA product that airs at Sundays at 3 p.m. between Talk Heathen and the Atheist Experience. I just finished recording an episode with a bunch of great people, and it'll be this Sunday's episode, so definitely go over and check it out. And it didn't happen today because we just couldn't get our stuff together. I've been sick with the whole DVT and a bunch of other things. So Andy and Seamus and myself normally get together the last Sunday of every month and at 2 p.m. And I do a little show called Atheist Drinking Out Loud. Unfortunately, I can't drink at the moment, although I'm going to sneak a beer in tonight for the after party. I can have one or two here and there, and it's okay. But being on blood thinners, it's not a good idea to drink, especially the stuff that I really like that I can't touch right now, which is like the Scotch, single malt Scotch. There, folks. I know, right? I know.
He has to drink water instead, the poor boy.
I know. Well, I'm drinking. It's okay. Water is the best thing for you, unless you're drowning.
Too much water does have a deleterious effect.
Yes, indeed, it does. Anyways, it's called Atheist Freaking Out Loud. It's over on Andy's channel, which is the Laughing in Disbelief channel. So head over there and you can check out the ones. We always have a guest with us too, so you never know when I might come knocking on your DMs to have you join us for an episode. All right, that's about it, guys. And like I always say at the end of these episodes, well, first of all, another great, big, huge thank you to Damien, a.k.a. the Tall, Friendly Atheist Dad, for joining me today. And until next time, guys, like I always say at the end of these episodes, like the late, great Christopher Hitchens once said, it's called faith because it's not knowledge. And we'll see you guys next time.